I had the phone in my hand. I had the number. I had rehearsed the words so many times they had worn smooth inside my head. All I had to do was dial. And then I heard something outside that made me put the phone face down on the table. Something that changed everything about what I was going to do next. And what I did instead, I have never forgiven myself for. It had been 4 days since I found the letter in my mother's cedar chest. 4 days of carrying it in my cardigan pocket during the day and placing it on the nightstand beside my bed at night, the way you keep something close that you are afraid of losing again after losing it once already. 4 days of waking at 3 in the morning and lying in the dark listening to the November wind move through the bare maple tree outside my window, asking myself the same question over and over. Was she still out there? Was she looking? Was it too late? On the 5th morning, I got up before sunrise, made a pot of coffee, and sat down at the kitchen table with the phone and a number I had spent 2 days finding. The number for the organization in Burlington, the same one my parents had taken me to in the winter of 1974. I did not know if it still existed. I did not know if records from 50 years ago had survived. I did not know if my daughter had ever tried to find me, or if she had built a life so complete and so whole that the question of where she came from had stopped mattering long ago. I did not know any of it, but I knew that I was 71 years old and that the maple tree outside my window would not stand forever, and that there are things which need to be done before it is too late to do them. I picked up the phone. I dialed. A woman answered on the 3rd ring, young voice, professional, the kind of careful warmth that people who work in difficult places learn to carry in their voices like a tool. I told her my name. I told her I was looking for information about an adoption that had taken place in February of 1974. There was a pause, the sound of fingers on a keyboard, and then she said something that made the kitchen tilt around me the same way the attic had tilted 2 weeks before. She said, "We have your file, Mrs. Whitfield. We have been holding it for quite some time." I asked her what that meant. She said she could not give me details over the phone, that there was a process, that I would need to come in and fill out paperwork and provide identification, and that it could take several weeks before anything could be released to me. Several weeks. I thanked her. I wrote down the address. I put the phone down on the table, and I sat very still, and I looked out the kitchen window at the bare November yard and the gray sky above the rooftop across the street. Several weeks felt like a very long time when you were 71 years old and had already waited 50 years. But I told myself it was all right. I told myself I had waited this long. I could wait a little longer. That was the morning. By afternoon, everything had changed. Thomas arrived at 3:30, earlier than I expected. I heard his truck on the gravel, and I had just enough time to slide the piece of paper with the Burlington address under the fruit bowl in the center of the table before he came through the door. He was wearing his work jacket, the dark green one with the collar turned up against the cold, and he had that look on his face that I have known since he was a boy, the look that means he has been thinking about something on the drive over and has decided he is going to say it whether the moment is right or not. He sat down at the kitchen table. I put the kettle on, and before I could say a single word, he said, "Mum, something is going on with you, and I need you to tell me what it is." I kept my back to him. I watched the kettle. I told him I did not know what he meant. He said he had been watching me for 3 weeks, and I was not myself. He said I was distracted at dinner and quiet in a way that was different from my usual quiet. He said he had called twice last week, and both times I had sounded like someone who was in the middle of a thought they did not want interrupted. He said he was not trying to pry. He said he was worried. I turned around. I looked at my son sitting at my kitchen table in his green work jacket with his father's careful eyes and his father's patient frown, and I felt something rise in my chest that I had not expected. Not guilt exactly, something older than guilt, something that had been sitting in that chest of its own for 45 years, since the day I held Thomas for the first time in the hospital and understood with a certainty that went all the way to the bone that I would spend the rest of my life making sure he never felt the weight of what I had left behind before he was born. I said, "I am fine, Thomas. I have just been tired." He looked at me for a long moment. The kettle began to whistle. I turned back to the counter, and I made the tea, and I brought it to the table, and I sat down across from him, and I talked about the weather, and about his neighbor's fence, and about whether the roads would ice over by the weekend. And Thomas let me. He drank his tea, and he answered my questions, and he let me steer us into safe water the way he always has, the way a good son learns to do with a mother who has spent 50 years being gently unreachable. But when he stood up to leave, he did something he did not usually do. He stopped in the kitchen doorway, and he turned around, and he looked at me standing there by the counter with my tea in my hands, and he said very quietly, "Mum, whatever it is, you do not have to carry it alone." I smiled at him. I told him I knew that. He nodded. He pulled his collar up, and he walked out to his truck and drove away down Elm Street into the grey November afternoon. I stood at the kitchen window and watched until his tail lights disappeared around the corner. Then I looked down at the fruit bowl in the center of the table. I lifted it. The piece of paper with the Burlington address was still there, exactly where I had put it. I picked it up. I folded it. I put it in my pocket. And I made a decision standing there in my quiet kitchen in the November light. I was not going to wait several weeks. I was not going to fill out forms and sit in waiting rooms and let a process that moved at its own pace decide when I was allowed to know if my daughter was still out there. I was going to Burlington myself, the next morning, first thing. What the woman on the phone told me when I walked through those doors, I was not prepared to hear, and what she said changed the entire shape of what happened next. Changed it in a way I still do not have the right words for, even now. But there is one thing I can tell you. When I walked out of that building on a cold November morning and stood on the sidewalk in the Burlington air, I was not the same woman who had walked in, because I had just learned that I was not the only one who had been searching, that on the other side of 50 years of silence, someone else had been looking too. And she had been looking for a very long time. That is the story waiting for you in the next part, and it begins with a phone call I did not make, because she made it first.
Have you ever wanted to reach out to someone after years of silence but did not know if they still wanted to be found? Leave a comment and tell me. I read every one. And if you are following Margaret's story, please subscribe so you do not miss what happens when she finally opens that door.